One of the world's largest forestry companies is cutting its lumber output in North America.
And hopes government action can help the badly wounded softwood lumber industry.
I think the frustrating thing is that so much faith has been put in the relationship between Canada and the U.S. over the last number of years, and to see your best friend turn on you and create an economic crisis to try to hurt you.
Canada explodes as a lumber giant shuts down production, shaking the nation's core. Jobs vanish, communities collapse, and the economy takes a brutal blow. With every mill silenced, the shutdown rips through the country like a storm.
But the media release stated that they would enact production curtailments through a combination of reduced operating hours, prolonged holiday breaks, reconfigured shifting schedules, and extended maintenance shutdowns.
Interfor, one of Canada's lumber giants, suddenly slashed production by a staggering 145 million board feet. That's nearly 12% of their operations gone overnight. In my opinion, this is an economic earthquake. Entire communities in Ontario and Quebec felt the ground shift beneath them as the news dropped.
It is official, and it's not just an increase, it is actually a doubling of those numbers.
Mills that had buzzed with life for decades, Sioux, Gogama, Timmins, Nairn Centre, Elk Lake, turned silent. Overnight, workers were left staring at locked gates and paychecks that would never come. For families built around these jobs, it wasn't just bad news, it was devastating. People were just angry. They were blindsided. That's why you hear the phrase, Canada explodes. Because when your livelihood is ripped away and your town is left in ruins, you don't stay quiet. You boil.
Obviously, then we're going to have to react, and we're also going to have to react as a country and as a government to retaliate or to put pressure on the Americans to try to reach some kind of compromise.
Okay, now to the ongoing trade war with the U.S. As expected, the White House has announced an increase.
The hammer came from across the border. The U.S. Commerce Department jacked up tariffs on Canadian lumber, up to 35%. Think about that. Canada's biggest trading partner, the so-called best friend, just slammed the door in our face.
But we're in a situation now where the disputes around softwood lumber are part of a bigger picture. American trade pressures have intensified and broadened.
For workers, it feels like betrayal. The very market they depend on turned around and said, your wood isn't welcome, unless you pay a price that crushes you. And the fear is spreading. Workers whisper about the next stage, total closures. Behind every number is a human being. And the math doesn't care that bills don't wait. Rent doesn't pause politely until the next shift. The power company doesn't care if your mill is closed.
I think Donald Trump needs to recognize, and also all of the elected people in the United States of America need to recognize that while this is attacking hardworking forestry workers in Canada,
small towns are hollowing out. Diners once packed at lunchtime sit empty. Schools lose funding. Even local hockey arenas, once proudly sponsored by lumber dollars, are cutting programs. The mills aren't just shutting down. The heartbeat of small-town Canada is falling silent.
Have added $6,000 to the cost of building a single-family home in the United States. So pointing out, Sarah, that these tariffs are hurting people on both sides of the borders, and not just the industries, but the people who are dependent on lumber to build homes and for their industries.
The heritage. Fathers, sons, grandfathers, 3 generations of mill workers who kept food on tables and towns alive. Now, those same families are staring at their children and wondering, do they even have a future here? Or are we watching the end of an industry that built this country? One worker put it best, 3 weeks of downtime feels like a lifetime when the bills don't stop. That's not exaggeration, that's reality.
Families who spent generations in lumber are now wondering if their livelihoods have a future at all. Why is it happening?
And the scariest part? And honestly, this feels like the climate itself has changed, and Canada's lumber towns are standing in the rain with no umbrella.
There was around 60 workers that weren't impacted, mostly in trades and the senior shifts. And then the other shift were junior workers. They took every second week off, collected unemployment, and then ran a production week. So,
good question. Enter Prime Minister Markcarney, the man once hailed as the golden boy of global finance. The Davos darling, the polished global banker.
The Prime Minister has indicated he's hoping for a resolution and that it will be a key part of any trade deal with the Trump administration.
But back home, Canada is collapsing in slow motion, and Carney treats it like background noise. Mills are shuttering, families are begging, communities are crumbling, and Ottawa's response? Words, endless words, promises of dialogue and safeguards. Translation, absolutely nothing concrete.
Canada is taking, and seems to continue to be taking, is looking at ways to support the industries that are impacted. So today is the softwood lumber sector. A few weeks ago, it was the steel sector. So premiers like Doug Ford.
Meanwhile, Carney is busy nodding on international stages about climate policy and fighter jets, as if Canadians can pay their hydro bills with applause from Brussels. Workers see it for what it is: betrayal. The word you hear most often isn't disappointment, it's abandonment.
Canada is a vital supplier to our southern neighbor. We represent around a quarter of the U.S. market, and we help keep down costs of American homes while improving their quality.
Because when your Prime Minister is obsessed with photo ops abroad, while your town is bleeding jobs, it doesn't feel like leadership, it feels like a blind eye.
That's a little bit disheartening to everybody.
Boone does not know the exact plans for how workers in the Soo will be impacted by the latest decision from their company, but remains optimistic this doesn't stretch beyond the end of the year.
Now look south. The U.S. is getting hammered by tariffs too, but the tone, completely different. Donald Trump steps on stage, slams his fist, and turns it into a rallying cry. America adapts. America wins. And guess what? Americans believe it. Their mills are hurting too, but workers still feel like someone is steering the ship. Leadership, direction, confidence.
For decades, the United States has alternated between confrontation and collaboration, frequently applying unfounded, countervailing and anti-dumping duties against Canadian softwood, and then signing formal agreements that benefited businesses, workers, and homeowners on both sides of the border.
Now contrast that with Canada. What do Canadians see? Press conferences stuffed with task forces and future consultations. Not direction. Drift a ship spinning in circles while the captain plays violin. Here's the kicker. This isn't just a lumber story anymore. It's the canary in the coal mine. Lumber is just the first domino. Others are already wobbling.
This is also going to make it next to impossible for Americans, middle-class Americans, to build their homes.
Breweries and distilleries are drowning under impossible costs and global competition. Energy, mining, and farming still standing, but flashing red warning signs. Inflation is chewing through everything. Debt levels are sky high. Food prices, outrageous. Rent, even worse.
While this is attacking hardworking forestry workers in Canada, this is also going to make it next to impossible for Americans, middle-class Americans, to build their homes. We all recognize, with the talk of tariffs these last number of months, the real people that pay for tariffs are consumers. And consumers...
The very industries that built Canada's middle class are breaking apart. And it's happening while leaders jet off to Europe for photo ops instead of fixing the roof that's caving in at home. This can't be spun with political jargon. These aren't statistics. These are people's lives.
Until then, the federal government is moving to help softwood producers. Markcarney is in West Kelowna today, and he outlines some of the challenges and the new supports for the industry.
Mayors are begging Ottawa for help. Begging. And what do they hear? Silence. More promises of consultation.
This is a big focus right now for the federal government, looking beyond the U.S. For trade partners and business investment. And so part of this money will help companies in Canada in this sector do just that.
That's the line that should terrify everyone. Because once hope shuts down, people leave. They pack up, move out, and don't come back. If you thought this was only about jobs and tariffs, think again. Indigenous leaders are stepping in, and they're furious.
America is, in effect, charging for access to its economy through a combination of higher baseline tariffs, unilateral trade liberalization by its partners.
Forestry companies now face collapse from both sides. On one, collapsing markets and tariffs. On the other hand, Indigenous pushback over poisoned land. It's like being trapped in a burning house, while Ottawa refuses to send the fire truck.
Canada is in a strong position. Despite our size, Canada is already the second largest foreign investor in the United States.
And here's where it gets dangerous. Carney is being painted, not by outsiders, but by Canadians themselves, as exactly what he looks like. An out-of-touch globalist banker. A man who knows Davos dinner menus better than shuttered mills in Quebec.
Is Kurt Nickaday. He is the president of the BC Lumber Trade Council. He's joining us from Vancouver.
Conservatives smell blood. They're hammering him daily, and ordinary Canadians are starting to agree. At this point, the lumber collapse is just the spark. The real fire is political. The conclusion is brutal. Canada is exploding. The mills are silent. The workers are abandoned. The leadership is absent. A country built on strength now feels like it's running on fumes. Like the video and hit the subscribe button to get more updates.